goes in here. We've got positive and negative. It's fused on the positive. Solar input comes down to your charge controller, positive and negative. So it comes into the solar charge controller, back out. Again, a fuse on the positive, comes over here into the positive distribution block. Battery 1 with its own breaker, battery 2 with its own breaker, all into the positive distribution block, follows in through the distribution block through a nice fat wire, through a giant fuse into another fat wire into the positive of the inverter. Each battery has its own equal length negative wires. Tell me this thing's fired up and running good, so we're gonna give it a test.
What's going on, guys? As you guys probably see, I have a whole bunch of solar equipment behind me. I am doing a really cool video with Miles from the owner of Light Harvest Solar. I actually don't think you've ever been on my channel. Now that I'm thinking of, you have not. No, just your manager, John. Yeah. So his manager, John, that runs Light Harvest Solar here, but he is the owner and operator, and all of this goodies behind us are all his products that he sells.
That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing?
Installing a Sprinter right now in a customer's rig.
And the customer's rig, actually it's right here. And that's my tripod for the camera. So we are going to show all this off. There's gonna be a lot of information in this video. All right guys, so I do have my GoPro handy, and when Miles is gonna be going over something, I'm gonna try and get a little bit closer so I can have actually 2 cameras running, which this is gonna be an editing nightmare for me, but this is what I wanna do for you guys. We have here a 2 battery system.
2 lithium batteries, 105 amp hours each, so 210 amp hours of lithium batteries.
And like you said, this is already for a client. The client actually agreed for us to do all of this. We are showing, there's a lot going on here, buddy. So really kind of break it down from all the way from what you're putting on the roof, which is this big mamma jamma back here, to what the heck all of this stuff is, because I really feel that this is probably the most important part of a van build, which is power.
Don't have much without electricity.
Right.
Try living without it.
We all think that electricity is so just whatever in a house because you flick a switch on or you plug in a cooktop or whatever. This is what powers all of that in an off-grid vehicle. Let's start with the solar panel.
Sure. Okay, so this particular solar panel is a Solaria Power XT 370 that just came out. In my opinion, this is the best panel made in the world. There's a few reasons why. When they first came out, they kind of revolutionized the panel world, and everybody's kind of trying to copy them. The biggest reason why is because it's got parallel strings, right? They all come down right here, and then they all meet right in here. All the energy comes through. So if you have partial shading, normally in a panel, it'll cut the whole panel off in kind of the older style panels. When this came out, what it does is if you block this one, it'll really only block this section, and the rest of the panel will produce. And that ends up in real world being quite a big deal. The production of these is quite a lot higher than just about anything. This is a single panel, 370 watts. There's a lot of advantage to doing 1 panel as opposed to like 4 100-watt panels.
I do want to say, by the way, for everybody right now, Miles and I are going over the entire system. We are going to sit down with Miles again in a very future video, actually 2 or maybe even 3. We're gonna literally talk only solar panels. We're not gonna talk about the rest. And then in a completely another video, we're gonna talk about just batteries. What are the differences between AGM, gel, lithium, and then there's like 3 or 4 different types of lithium. So we are gonna go into that in a different video. This video is just about the entire setup itself. Just be patient, please, because we can't fit everything into one video. So this one is again about all of the systems. So you do sell a bunch of different commercial grade panels.
Yeah, they're all big, they're all powerful.
You don't sell the 100 watters.
No, because there's no reason to have them. The only reason why they even exist is to be shippable through the mail. Let me tell you the downside of these. I have to buy a full pallet of them, that's 30 panels. I have to have a forklift. Sometimes I have to have a business license to even get a hold of them. They're too big to ship via UPS. That's really the only reasons why everybody doesn't run these.
So the ones that you buy off of Amazon are not these?
No, they're not. They're not.
You can't ship them that way.
You can't, not really. That's going to do an industrial array, solar array is going to put 1,000 100-watt panels when they could put, it would be about the equivalent of, 250 of these, right?
Is this what you see on somebody's house?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's all they are.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And they're the best technology, biggest manufacturers, lower price, UL rated. Almost none of those little panels are UL rated. There's a whole bunch of advantages.
And that is exactly why we're doing a video on solar panels themselves. I don't want to go into detail with that.
The only disadvantage to these is they're hard to get.
They're not hard to get if you go through you.
They're not hard to get. That's what I do. That's my business model. Is I buy a lot of them and I sell them in kits.
Yeah.
One panel.
Your business is really focused on van life, boat life,
Cabins,
tiny house,
remote stations, power stations,
anything off grid.
Anything off grid.
Okay. At the end of the video, we're going to show this actually all put together, right? I mean, this is going to be crazy. The function, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, batteries, what the heck these things are, why you have different wires and sizes, breakers, and I just gave you a whole bunch of information. But yeah, let's get into that, and let's switch over to this, and we're going to go talk to you.
Perfect. Probably the biggest thing that we do for people is figure out the real specific. And that's sometimes not easy to do. It took us a fair amount of time, but let me just go over the components here real quick. We got the batteries. That's going to be like equivalent to your gas tank. So this is going to be like your gas pump. The batteries are going to be your gas tank. This particular one has 2 lithium batteries. The practical limit for doing it this way is about 4. Sometimes if people really want to be high performance, top end stuff, they'll do 6. In general, it tends to be between 2 and 4. 2 tends to be the practical minimum. Even a 1 battery system is quite effective and quite powerful. The reason why we use these Lion Energy batteries, there's a few reasons. They're the best on the market right now, but the biggest, number one reason is because it's got 150 amp discharge each. That's like 1.8 kilowatt. And compared to most of them are 100 amp hours, that's 1.2 kilowatts. You generally need about 1,500 watts minimum to really do the job that you need to do. And so, if you're doing a 1 battery system, this is the only battery I would get. And again, even beyond that, that's the only battery I would get for a bunch of reasons. It's small, it's light, it's a little less expensive, it's got a lifetime warranty to 3,500 cycles, 150 amp discharge rate, which is absolutely top notch. We have our solar charge controller, which will take the power from the solar panel. It turns it into the battery power. An MPPT, what it does is it takes a high voltage, and this is a much higher voltage than these little 100 watt panels, 50 volts. And then this, of course, is the DC to DC charger to charge from the alternator. You basically hook it up to the car battery, and it will charge while you're driving.
So they look very similar, but they do very different things.
I mean, in reality, inside they kind of do the similar things. They change the voltage. They change the voltage from one to another, and then they regulate it. This is in between the solar panel and the batteries. This is between the car alternator and the batteries.
Awesome.
And they both basically regulate charge.
The 130.
100 volts maximum.
Okay.
Okay. So in other words, if this is 50 volts, I could put 2 of these in series and make it 100 volts.
Perfect.
30 amps maximum is the discharge, the output, and I've seen these do over 30 amps. So this is the charge controller you want. You could go with a 42, but a 30 is just fine.
If you're reading 30 and you said this can put out more than 30 sometimes, is that okay?
Once or twice. It just turns off. These all have. I'm sorry, it doesn't turn off. It regulates it to 30.
Okay, so it won't go higher than 30.
Right, and when I see 30, it's few and far between. A couple times a year.
But you can get, like, I believe you sell a 150. The 50.
Yeah, you can get 50 amp ones, but it's more expensive, and there's really not a reason to do it.
Okay.
So we're not going to sell you something that's $200 more for a case that's going to come into play once a year.
I mean, bringing 30 amps into your batteries is plenty.
It's a lot of power.
Yeah, it is a lot of power.
Impressive, yeah, for sure.
And you can charge your 2 battery system very quickly off of 30 amps.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fairly decent capacity. So 30 amps, let me just do a little bit of math here. It's 105. I mean, it would take like, in general, solar is varying a lot depending on the length of the days and how much sun you have. So the amount of time it's going to take to charge those is going to vary a lot. In the worst of the Oregon winters, it might take like 4 or 5 days. In the best of the Oregon summers or anywhere else, it's going to take 3/4 of a day.
Okay.
Something like that.
I love that answer because people ask me that all the time. It depends on where you are in the country, where you are in the world, angle of the sun, time of year, everything.
Yeah, the 2 biggest factors, and there's a bunch of factors, but the 2 biggest ones are the time of the year, which means the length of the day, the cloud cover.
Yep.
Right? How much sun there is. And then there's smaller factors, like you said, the angle of the sun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're under trees, things like that.
Yeah. The Orion DC to DC charger, wow, this thing is beefy, huh?
It is beefy, yeah.
The Orion DC to DC charger, that 30, again, that's 30 amps, I presume?
30 amps.
Okay, and the 12 to 12 is
12, the DC to DC.
Yeah, essentially 12 volts to 12 volts. Now, lithium batteries are about a volt higher than lead acid batteries, which is what you have in your starting battery.
Yep.
So this needs to go from your starting battery, bump it up about a volt or something like that, and then charge these. And it's all regulated, so it'll turn off when you need it to turn off, when the batteries are full, etc., etc. Between the solar panel, you could get up to 30 amps, and then this would be another 30 amps, so you could conceivably have 60 amps going into the batteries.
This is your MPB, or excuse me, your MC4 cable.
That's right. This
that goes from there to there?
Yeah.
There to there,
okay, so MC4 is what's on the back of this. It's a standard solar connector. Any good solar panel is going to have those. Here's the tie through to go through the roof.
Okay.
Okay. It's going to come down into your charge controller. Now it's going to go through a fuse, and these are the fuses we used. Again, one of the things that we do is we've tried every fuse. We have been able to dial into what we really like. We just pick what we think is the very best and go with it. And that's really all we do. Is really difficult for people is fusing, because you don't, how do you even know that what size this is, right? What are you going to do? Order a bunch of things you don't know?
Jeez, man, you have so many different sizes.
It all has to
too.
match,
I mean,
and it all has to be perfect too. You can't mess any of this stuff up. And the fuse has to match how much electricity you're anticipating to move. So basically, you can see right here is a number 10 wire, right?
Okay.
High voltage in through a fuse that's a high quality fuse. This is called a meaty fuse with a lug that fits this wire. And then as it's coming out, you're gonna get a low voltage with high amps. So now you need to move to a bigger wire. You can see how much bigger it is. You need
what is this one, a 10?
No, this is a 10.
Oh,
this is an 8.
Okay.
Okay, so you're capable of moving maximum, I think, of 45 amps. This would be about 30. But then you have to have number 8, right? Then you have to have a bigger fuse for it and everything.
Jesus.
So there's a million details that have to be right, and that's what we really do, because it's a major pain. All of these are fused on the positive. So basically, you've got an input in from the solar panel through a fuse on the positive wire into the charge controller. A wire coming out through another fuse on the positive, and then that's going to go to the distribution. Essentially, you've got a positive and a negative, right? So this is going to be the same as your batteries. Everything comes in, everything goes out. You can see I can put 8 small things in. Okay, just a wire goes in there and it clamps down, and I got 2 big ones out.
These are not, you don't see a lot of these in other people's power boxes. Why do you carry these? Why are these different than, or what are these really?
Yeah, okay, so those took me a long time to find. They were a major headache. They're by far the best out there for a couple reasons. Essentially a bus bar, okay? It's the same as a bus bar. What makes these ones better is, one, they'll do 310 amps. And we're moving a lot, with these modern lithium systems, you can move a lot of power around, and that's a huge problem with a lot of these systems, is they'll use bus bars that are not rated to move this much power around, okay? So that's the first thing, is you can move a lot of power around. The second thing is that you can see there's no open terminals. Most people will do bus bars, and then they'll make another crimp, put it on the bus bar, and you've got a whole bunch of live open terminals inside your thing, which is really super dangerous to do. This keeps it so you don't have to use one of these terminals, and you just strip the wire, stick it in, call it good. So the 2 major advantages over a traditional bus bar is there's no exposed terminals, that's a safety thing, and they're very easy to use because you just put the wire in and clamp it down. Sorry about that, lots of details.
No, this is great. I think everybody's gonna love it.
Yeah, and of course I love to talk too.
You have some really thick wire here, buddy.
Right.
What the heck is going on?
Absolutely, super duper important, okay? You have to size the wire for the amount of electricity that is going in and out. Essentially, it's like this. You can't fill a lake through a straw. Some of these times we're trying to fill a lake, and there's the amount of electricity that's being moved around is different everywhere. We got 30 amps here, we got 30 amps here, but right here, this is going to your inverter. Right here we have a 2,000 watt inverter. So while we might have 30 amps here, this is going to be more like 170, 180 amps, right?
Okay.
So tons of power going through. We need to have tons of wire. Again, that's what we can do that is really hard for other people to do because they just don't have the skill set to know how to do it, to size the wires. big wires, big inverter, run between essentially the
big,
batteries.
Big fuse. Holy
right?
crap, that's a 300 amp fuse?
300 amp fuse, yeah. And then of course it's got to be beefy, it's got to be quality. This particular fuse is a really nice one. I've had tons of problems with the standard Amazon ones. They'll get all hot. I've had them melt. I haven't had one catch on fire yet, but I absolutely have had them melt. So the problem is people don't know which fuse you're going to buy. You look at the ratings and then you read and you know, but you don't know really what you're getting until it's in your hands.
Right.
And you really don't know if it's going to work until you install it. And once you install it, if it's not working good, it's a big bummer because it's a big problem. And all of these things have to be perfect. All the crimps have to be perfect. All the fuses have to be high quality. Everything has to work, or you don't have a working system.
So the inverter, this is for the client. This is a 2000 watt inverter. However, this is not an inverter charger.
That's right.
You have an inverter charger right here for us.
That's right.
What is the difference between these two?
Sure,
This
super
is,
easy.
again, per client, that's what they wanted.
That's what they wanted.
Right.
Okay.
And they're cheaper.
They are cheaper. So the difference is that this is an inverter. This is going to turn battery power, DC, into house power, AC. So it's 12 volts DC to 120 volts alternating current, which is the main thing you need because you can plug in and you can get your alternating current power.
You can charge computers, laptops, you can do
whatever you can
an
plug
induction,
into a house.
yeah, everything cooking wise.
Fans, microwaves, coffee pots, toaster ovens, vacuum cleaners, big drills, big saws, big whatever.
That's what this is for.
That's what this will do.
Gotcha.
This does exactly the same thing, and in addition to that, if you plug it in to the outside world, that means shore power at a campsite, a generator, your house, anything, it will also charge the batteries and it will power your all your plugs in your rig.
Okay, right.
So the difference is this will take battery power to house power.
Yep.
This will take battery power to house power, and it will charge your batteries when you are plugged in from the outside world. So it's just an additional feature. It tends to be $400 or $500 depending on the brand and what kind of meters you need to run it. Super picky with what I'll even sell, because inverters are traditionally the absolutely least reliable component of the entire system.
The least reliable?
Oh yeah, horrible, right? And so when you have something that works and works good, that's what you go with. The worst thing you could do is get something off of like Amazon or something like that that has the features, but it's a lot less expensive. You got 1 month. If it breaks, you're out $400 or $500 or $600. So
and they can. So I've seen them last a month. I've seen them last 6 months. You want something longevity wise.
The quality is highly variable.
Yeah.
And I just don't have time to mess around and dink around with nonsense, right? So I just go straight to the good stuff. I only use it. I'm super loyal to the brands that I like.
You have a distribution box, I believe, right?
Right. So basically, these are going to be your distribution for your really high power stuff. Okay. And then it's going to go through a wire to this, and this has alternating current and direct current. So this is your small stuff like your lights, your fridge, your pumps, all your small DC stuff. And then this is also going to have your alternating current, which is your house power, and you've got a breaker, and it's flush mounted. So you cut a hole in your cabinet, you'll be able to see it. You have easy access to all your fuses on the DC side, all your breakers on the AC side, and then you can write what they are for. You need that in one way or another. That particular component is, again, what we think is the best.
There's just so much happening right here.
Right.
Biggest question is, can somebody get all of this off of you?
That's how it's not the only way we do things, but by far the most common way, because most people don't want to deal with any of this nonsense.
My question is can they just call you up or email you and say, hey, I want exactly all of this, and they can purchase it all through you?
Absolutely. It's a fairly easy process at this point. They call and we have a conversation about what kind of vehicle or what their application is, and then we decide a few things. We decide what panel they want, or panels they want depending on the application. We decide what how many batteries they want. Okay. We decide how big of an inverter they want. Okay, typically it's a 2000 or a 3000. There's not much of a reason to go less than 2. There's not much of a reason to go above 3. We find out if they want an inverter or an inverter charger.
Right. By the way, that's a 3000, guys.
That's a 3000 inverter charger. We find out if they want alternator charging.
Right, which I think is essential.
Yeah, and then most people just need that, and then beyond that, that's the only information we need to know to do everything we need to do.
Right.
From there, we just jot it down, get your email, get your name, and send you an estimate with everything you need. And then all the stuff that nobody wants to figure out is already figured out. You get all the wiring sized right, all the lugs sized right. You get a drawing. Schematic
you
drawing.
do get a drawing, which is right down there.
Yeah,
from you.
that matches this system. We give you a little bit of extra hardware just in case you mess up, some extra lugs, some extra fuses, and then we send it out. Of course, we offer free tech support if you buy it from us.
And thank you again for laying all this out for us.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so Miles, you have all this stuff here, right? You're now selling a product that I am infatuated with.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And I actually want one myself. And you are really up in your game with it. But if somebody doesn't want to deal with all of this, they now can get something like again, the reason why I want it is because I want an overland rig.
Right.
Can you show me what this is?
Yeah, sure. So basically we have this right here, which is an all-in-one power unit that is basically everything in here except for maybe the alternator charger, because you just do it a different way, is in here. We've got a 1.8 kilowatt hour lithium battery, which is just a little bit smaller than those two. We've got a 1,000-watt inverter, which is again just a little bit smaller than that. So it's inverter, solar charge controller, and lithium battery. And then a few small things like USB ports, cigarette lighter, and things like that. So you can see the plugs are right here. Yeah, and it just is super easy. You don't have to put all this together. This is really the first product on the market that nails all of it. Really reliable, small, light, powerful, and you just plug the solar in and you're ready to go. They're portable, which is really nice because it makes it so you can, if I've got a saw over there I want to do, but I don't want to search through my house for an extension cord, I just pick that up and draw it, take it over there. I take it camping all the time.
One of the reasons why you like this particular configuration and what's on the inside of this, the panels you sell.
That's right.
Are a higher voltage. Right. And can actually charge this thing.
That's right. And this was one of the first, absolutely critical in my world. I just never use the small panels. There's no, unless there's a space consideration on the roof, unless I have to.
But if you use your panel with another portable power station, that it won't charge, or will it? Or
some people are getting their head in the game. Okay. It's a very competitive thing. There's people getting their head in the game, but a lot
most of them don't.
It's even worse than that. A lot of them will make it so that you have to buy their product. And then their product is quadruple market price.
So anything with an MC4 cable can hook up to this.
Well, yeah, sure, anything they can, but that's not the determining factor. The determining factor is the panel voltage. Gotcha. Right. This will take a high panel voltage and has an MPPT controller.
Price on something like this, all-in-one 1,000-watt inverter, what would it be?
$1,150 on that.
$1,150. You have another one that's similar looking, slightly more expensive, but it's bigger.
Yeah, it's exactly the same in every respect except for it's got a bigger battery in it. So it's physically a little bit longer, it's a little bit heavier, it's got a bigger battery, which equates to a bigger gas tank.
What's the price on that?
$1,850. Okay. For a 2.4 kilowatt hour lithium battery.
Same 1,000-watt inverter.
1,000-watt inverter, 500-watt MPPT charge controller.
And then hopefully in about a month and a half.
Maybe a couple months.
Yeah, a couple months. You're going to get another version of this that is a 2,000-watt inverter.
2,000-watt inverter. It should have a 2 kilowatt hour battery lithium. It should have a 700-watt MPPT charge controller, bunch of plugs, 25 amp DC output for, say, your fridges or your lights or whatever you got on DC.
And what is that going to run?
About $2,000.
About $2,000. Okay. And then just in comparison, what does all of this run? Give or take.
All of this,
a ballpark. 4,000? Like if they were to buy it and then if they were to put it together.
It's about $4,000. Yeah.
Even with this bad Larry.
That's gonna maybe be 45.
45. Okay. So okay, cool. And that's including panel?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's wow, you have a really good price there. You said this was roughly $4,000 to $5,000 depending on components and battery. If you add another battery, you're looking at another $1,000 easily, $900, yeah. If somebody was to do it themselves, great. If somebody was to hire Miles or Nomadic Customs builds them or other people build them, sure. Jason, whoever, how much does the labor vary?
About the same.
So it's another $4,000 on top of that.
I had to put it on top, right? Okay. And again, that's going to be soon. One of the advantages using these smaller ones is because then I don't have to use my hours to build this.
Right. How many hours does this take?
It takes us, this system, all the way in, all the way tested, all the way programmed, all the way functioning, is gonna, I think I quoted in 42 hours.
42 hours. And that's usually, I think you have 2 guys usually working on it?
Yeah.
So it's really, it's like 20 hours worth of time, but it's 2 guys working, so 40 something hours, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's why people don't have to understand this.
There's a lot of details that have to be perfect,
Okay guys, we are now with Miles, and the entire kit is assembled and the solar panels on the roof. So we're just going to show pretty much all that all done. So here is Miles. We're up on top of that green van.
We're just pulling this project together here, and I wanted to do a quick rundown of everything that is important to know for you. So the first thing to know is the mounting brackets. This is how we mounted it on to the van we actually went through. We've got 6 of those. We did VHB double-sided tape. The solar panel wires, there's a positive and a negative with an MC4 wire, goes into the strain relief is what this is called. It goes down into there. We cut a hole in the roof, and now we have solar power down in there. And this is the 370 watt Solaria Power XT. You can see it fits really nicely up there. It's very stealth once you get down from below and look at it. So let's go into the van and we'll show you.
Okay, so now we're gonna go inside. This will be explained in a minute on why we even have that.
Quick overview. Wire through this. This is called a snap ring, I believe. Make sure that we use P-clamps to secure our wires everywhere. Any sharp edges right here, we're gonna avoid, and we're gonna bend the wire to avoid them, and we're also gonna use what's called split loom. Comes down here and goes around a sharp edge. There's a nice sharp edge there. We had to put loom and we zip tie it, so we make sure that it's away from that sharp edge. Comes down here, same thing, sharp edge. Goes in here, we've got positive and negative. It's fused on the positive. Okay, here's your solar input. Comes down to your charge controller, positive and negative. You can see here I had to cut this sheathing back without cutting the black wire. Then I had to fabricate these. So it comes into the solar charge controller, back out. Again, a fuse on the positive, comes over here into the positive distribution block. Here's battery 1 with its own breaker, battery 2 with its own breaker, all into the positive distribution block, follows in through the distribution block through a nice fat wire, through a giant fuse, into another fat wire, into the positive of the inverter. Each battery has its own equal length negative wires. Every single one of these wires, this positive, 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 has to be the same equal length in this design. Comes up, negative into your inverter. This is going to take battery power, turn it into house power. 12 volt DC to 120 volt AC. They tell me this thing's fired up and running good, so we're going to give it a test. Big test with our gigantic DeWalt saw.
The one thing I didn't see, Miles, was actually the breaker panel. Where are you going to be installing that?
Oh, that's going to be right here.
So you haven't, this is going to be in a closed box. We left it open for you guys so we can actually give you that quick demonstration of it all at the end, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When it's enclosed, that's where the breaker panel will be,
yeah,
which will be accessible to the client for them to switch out fuses or for whatever that case is.
Yep, AC breakers and DC breakers.
Awesome.
Or DC fuses.
Right, okay.
Right.
So you want to try and give this a whirl, see if we can run this?
God, I haven't even had it going yet, so we're gonna do it. Let's grab some wood. And of course, it has to work. Perfect, right off the bat. So we'll see.
I hope this works.
I better. Let's see.
So Miles, that was great. Thank you for demonstrating that for us, buddy. That was that's a big old miter saw that your inverter handled quite easily.
I don't think you guys really understand what his and his team have done for us today. I know that this was a serious crash course in everything that we are talking about. This is really just a drop in the bucket. This is the beginning. I want to show more about this, but it's hard. It's hard to pack it into one video. Our attention spans are just not there in regards to just life. Hopefully you guys really saw what you needed so far. Again, we are going to see Miles really, really soon. To find him before we cut the video, best way to get in contact with you is Light Harvest Solar.
Yeah, website, lightharvestsolar.com.
And your emails are on the website and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, Miles at lightharvestsolar.com.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, John at lightharvestsolar.com.
You keep up with times, I know you do.
Oh, you got to stay on the forefront because it's changing by the day.
Yeah, so any new products that are going to be hitting market in regards to whatever, he actually buys them, you test them,
blow them up.
You blow them up. It's kind of crazy.
All the time. Got it.
All right, guys. Please give him a follow. Check him out. Light Harvest Solar, Miles. Thank you again. And you're going to see a heck of a lot more of this guy because I need him. I need him.
All right.